Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first Industry Night session, the first part of four. Today, we're joined by Jacobs, by David, Rob, Reardon, and Alyssa. So just before I hand over to them, just a few bookkeeping things. If you could please join Zoom with your uni email. That way we can track you down and put you in our PEP Hour spreadsheet. And we encourage you to turn on your cameras throughout the presentation as well, if you're comfortable. And just so that everyone knows, this presentation will also be recorded. So the run of today's presentation would be the first half will be run by the Jacobs team. And you're encouraged to put your questions in the Slido link that we've put in the comments section. And at the end, I'll be going through the questions for our reps to go through with us today. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to David.
We would have lost Queena there for a sec. Queena, you're back.
Am I back?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, awesome. Where did you lose me?
At the end in the Slido.
Oh, okay, yeah. So at the end, we'll be going through the questions you provided in Slido. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to David, Rob, Reardon, and Alyssa.
Good evening, everyone. So as you can see, we're from Jacobs. Just before we get started, is it all right if you guys jump into Menti? So scan the QR code or use the link. I'll give that 2 minutes for you guys all to join in. All right, so we'll get started. So Jacobs is quite a large engineering firm. It's in over 40 countries, and these countries are shaded in on your map that you can see. We have 400 offices over the world, and actually recently we've opened a new one in Japan. And also now we have around 60,000 employees worldwide. And just for your information, we also have $15 billion of annual revenue, which is quite big. Now just to introduce our three speakers for tonight.
Okay. My name's Rob. I'm on the left there. I'm an engineer and geologist with Jacobs. I've been here for about 5-6 years now, here in Sydney. And my experience before this, I graduated in the UK. I'm originally from the UK. And I worked for about 8 years in Hong Kong with AECOM, or Faber Monsell originally, and then AECOM, they got bought out. Then I came to Sydney to work with Jacobs. And since then, I've been on a lot of the big infrastructure projects around here. That's why I came here. There was a big drive to increase the team, basically, because we won WestConnex. So I've been involved in WestConnex and dominantly that, and Sydney Metro as well. So yeah, I'm geotech, basically. So I can help answer any of the geotech questions and stuff like that. I'll hand it over to Dave to introduce himself.
Thanks, Rob. G'day, everyone. I'm Dave Spring. Says there that I'm section lead for roads and highways, which was true up until about 2 weeks ago. I started on working on the M7, M12 project specifically. But anyway, been doing that section lead role for a couple of years, looking after the roads and highways team in Sydney. But yeah, before that, I actually started with a company doing construction work a while ago, and then joined up with SKM, which was then bought out by Jacobs about, 10 years ago now. Went overseas and did some other work, aid and development work, firstly with Jacobs and then Cardno, but came back because, I knew a lot of people and it's a great place to work at Jacobs. So, happy to talk about any and all of that later on. Alyssa?
Thanks, Avi. So my name is Alyssa Fu. I have joined the Jacobs for 1 year, and I'm a graduate rail safety assurance and system engineer. So it's a special area of civil engineering. And my background is civil water engineering. So I worked as a civil engineer at Orcom, and then I did flood modeling in another company called WMS. And now I'm at Jacobs. And I'm working on some big projects such as Suburban Rail Loop and some Yarrow Tram project in Melbourne. Yeah, that's me.
All right. So what Reardon's managed to set up here is this Menti thing. This is the first time we're using it, so if we seem a little bit sort of strange for it, but he seems to be quite competent in it. The idea is that we're going to have a bit of an interactive presentation here. So all of us will be having a bit of a chit chat. And basically, as we go through, there's going to be interactive parts, basically. So it seems like people are already getting used to it. But to get a feel for what the audience is looking to get involved with in terms of civil engineering, you can just click on the screen there, and we'll get a bit of a feel for what some people who aren't even doing civil engineering.
Well, they might change after hearing this talk, you know.
Well, yeah, maybe, yeah. So, Gordon, we'll give you a couple of seconds to sort of to populate this. These are the dominant areas that we're sitting in terms of civil engineering, anyway. So we've got project management there, and we've got rail that no one appears to be interested in at the moment. Roads and highways as well, which is where I sit. I guess, David, you're also in roads and highways, right? Like under different sort of wing of that. It's quite a big department. And what else we got? We got structures. There's quite a few structural engineers. Only one geotech. That's disappointing. Who is that? Is that can people speak on this? Who's the geotech? Who's the one single geotech? Are they going to be shy? Fair enough. Okay, yeah, fair on. So Jacobs is an international company. We're based out of the US, but through, well, partly organic and inorganic growth, like where we bought other companies. And there's a lot of people, like you'll find Jacobs and AECOM in a similar sort of boat. They're very big companies. And what ultimately happens is you'll leave one company and then the company you just left will buy you over. So you can see here that we've sort of dominated quite a lot of the globe. This is a map of what I understand to be our offices, where our offices are based. But actually, we do work outside of this. I know through Africa, through the I think it's through the World Bank funded projects that we'll have jobs in Ethiopia and such like that. So this is just where our offices are. So you can sort of populate that as well in terms of where you want to work. It's interesting that quite a few people want to work across in China, but no one wants to go in the US or Canada.
Patagonia, someone keen for that?
No one wants to work in New Zealand either. Okay. So out of our just from a geotech perspective, more so in tunneling, we find that it's particularly our Brisbane guys, but also some of our Sydney guys. They support a lot in terms of both the Middle East and through part of Asia, and they do that from Sydney. They're not actively flying out there, although they may have to visit once or twice. But we do a lot of that, mainly in tunnels, because there's a big budget in tunnels. So we'll find that Singapore, for example, in Hong Kong, there's a lot of tunnel work across there, and our guys will actively support that, as well as projects across in the Middle East, which we'll touch on. So Jacobs Go. This is a program that's for, I think it's for everyone below a senior level. I think it is. I may need to be corrected on that. But basically the idea is that around the world, different offices will basically stump up and be like, look, we've got a project and there's budget on this project, and therefore we can take someone externally in. And usually what companies do, or at least offices will do, they'll look and be like, well, one of our guys wants to go out, so we'll offer a program in. You know, and basically what happens is you can put forward, there'll be a list, every so often there's a list that goes around, and basically you can put forward and be like, there's a job in London last 6 months, or in New York, or wherever, and you can put your name forward to be picked as part of that. So during your sort of graduate and that immediate period postgraduate, like up till about, that'd be about 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years experience, there are opportunities to travel around the world with Jacobs internally. To be honest, I've moved continents with Jacobs as well, and before I even was part of Jacobs, so it's not like this is the be all and end all. It's just a benefit that we do have. But then beyond this sort of stage, you'll find that, in fact, most of our team, to be fair, is 50% of our team, maybe more, is from outside of Australia, and they've moved here with Jacobs. So Jacobs certainly does move people around if you want to be. You don't get forced, but there are opportunities to move around the world as part of the company, and they sponsor that. You got anything else to add, actually, David? Sorry, I'm sort of talking a lot here, but feel free to.
You're on fire, mate. Yeah, I also got the opportunity to travel with Jacobs, not only long term over to the Pacific Islands, but short term for projects and things in Malaysia, and some of our offices are in India. Like a lot of the design work would happen there, or in Philippines or whatever. And sometimes there's a chance to go there and be part of that team for a while too. So yeah, carry on.
Okay, so you can they type stuff in here? This is where, okay, so this is basically what we're talking about civil engineering here, and sort of like in terms of the public eye, it's large infrastructure projects that people know about. Some of that is because of poor media attention. Unfortunately, that's dominantly a thing in it. This is broken down, this is blowing a budget, and so on and so forth. But in civil engineering, you'll be part of that. You may be responsible for part of that. So let's see what people think in terms of projects that you've heard of, I guess. Well, yeah, okay. I do not know.
A couple of votes for Parramatta Light Rail there. It's pretty popular.
Yeah, so Metro, everyone's heard of Metro then. And the new airport as well. Western Sydney Airport, Sydney Fish Market. New highway from the airport to city. Which one's that? Is that M7?
Yeah. I think that's the M12.
M12.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, you can flick on it. So, as you'd expect, I suppose, a lot is not going on right in Sydney. So these are projects that we've been involved with just in Sydney. Jacobs has had quite a bit of involvement in a lot of these projects. WestConnex is the big one. That's the big tunnels from, where does it go now? Somewhere down south, all the way up through past the airport, St. Peter's, and then out towards, it's on the M7, isn't it? Out M8, out towards Parramatta. So that was a massive project for us. That was one of the projects that I came over for from Hong Kong, and I joined Jacobs specifically for that because we were involved on site. So we'd done the design work, and then we were involved in a role on site, which is called Construction Phase Services, CPS. You hear about it quite often in the industry here. CPS is a term. So it's basically site-based work, and where you're involved in the actual day-to-day of those projects. So WestConnex was a massive one for us. It really grew our team geotechnically through transport, and then we rolled into Sydney Metro as part of that. And Warringah Freeway, even though it's a huge job, that was almost tagged on the side alongside these other jobs. Cross River Rail, we've got involvement in that. Western Sydney Airport as well. I'm not too sure about our involvement in that, but we've certainly had some. And then Neon as well, which is out in the Middle East. So that's all done out of the Sydney office. And then obviously as you go to Brisbane and Melbourne and then outside of Australia as well, there's a plethora of projects just because of the size of Jacobs. We're able to man these projects. You tend to find smaller corporations, we'll joint venture with them. So a few of these jobs now we'll join up with a smaller firm and they'll sort of piggyback off us in terms of getting on board with some of them. But it's also a good thing for us actually as well, because it means that you kind of have, it's not just about, oh, I'm only able to access people inside of Jacobs. You can access people outside of Jacobs as well through those joint ventures and learn different skill sets and basically form connections as well that you may not have otherwise been able to. Have you got anything to add, David, for this before
Me? Yeah, I was just going to comment on the Western Sydney Airport. Not sure of our specific involvement there, but I guess partly that shows the size of the team here. Like, you know, we've got aviation engineers and pavement engineers who are probably doing something, or the building services group that, you know, sits outside of our sort of transport focus. And we're part of projects like that as well. So yeah, it's great.
Oh, okay. So, well, maybe you could talk to this one, David. I guess it's a key thing that Jacob sort of pride itself on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I guess, you know, probably a lot of companies have this as a value in wanting to say that we don't all want to be the same sort of people. If we have the same sort of people in the office from the same background and the same cultural understanding, then we're all going to end up with the same answers, which might not be right a lot of the time. And you know, even in Sydney, we've obviously got a pretty multicultural sort of society. And so if we're just having one sort of cultural group think kind of developing our projects for the public, then we're going to be missing a lot of things. So, I mean, there's lots of good reasons to put a lot of emphasis on it. From Jacob's point of view, trying to get, you know, a wide range of outcomes, but I wanted to put it to the group, I suppose, to find out what other people think, because we might think it's really important, but people coming into our company just sort of think, you know, like, what difference does it make? So that's interesting. Just seeing the spread there. I guess there's a pretty strong support for 1 and 2, which is really important, very important. No one's chosen. It doesn't really matter. So so that I think supports what we would think about it too.
Arguably, hopefully in the future it doesn't matter because it's just part of us as culture. It's just, you know what I mean? It's just a background thing like everything else. But
exactly, yeah.
I suppose that's the end goal, isn't it? Where you're at a point where that's just the way that it is, where everyone's inclusive and
yeah, that's right. And the current policy is that we have at least a 50-50 split between male and female in our across our staff, but also recognising there's other genders, and there's an overall policy to have a 40-40-20 split for male and female 40-40, and then people who identify as other. So, look, I think there's a great opportunity that's just on the gender side to be part of Jacobs and included in that way.
I think so. This, speaking from a geotech perspective, right? Like dominantly geotech, it's a bit of a it can be seen as a bit of a dirty sort of area of civil engineering, literally, right? Like people are on site and you get covered in mud and all the rest of it, and as a result, you tend to find that because you're interfacing with a lot of people, a lot of labor, and they tend to be dominantly men, and as a result, I think that geotech generally sort of leans towards that, and you end up with a lot of men just kind of coming through on this side of things, even from a design perspective. However, at Jacobs, I found that in comparison to my experience in the past, there's a large number of women in our team. Like I think it's probably close to 50-50, I think. And they're all involved in site work and all the rest of it. And it sort of shows like from when I started, and it was just like I only started like 14 years ago or something. It's quite a long time ago. But the team I joined was just men. And it wasn't necessarily because that's all they were looking for. So that's all that was in the market. I joined a small team, to be fair, in Northern England, but nonetheless, there wasn't that many. And when you kind of look at that now, where we've got people, well, women from all over the world. We've got, like Iranians, Americans, Australians, everything. Like it's quite a detailed sort of, well, diverse team. Yeah, it's good. It's really good.
Yeah, it is.
And we also have like, people retired from army. We will support these people to help them at work. And also some people with some sort of disabilities and with different religions belief.
Yeah, that's right. Do you want to go to the next slide, Rian? I think it might sort of highlight some of that. These are some of the things that I guess Alyssa was referring to. These names here, I mean, they're just names that internal Jacobs people would understand, but they're all of those are different groups for that people can be part of just informally as part of their work to be with people who are similar in mindset or
so for example,
like you said, Alyssa, religion or background.
So for example, VetNet is people who retired from army, and the PRISM is for the like LGTB group. And that's also true. in LAS is, I think it's from people from Latin
America. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, there's opportunities there to engage that way. Next one.
Oh, yeah.
This is your favorite topic.
Yeah, this is quite interesting, this one, right? So feel free to start to answer that. The questions are fairly self-explanatory. I was keen to get this in, right? Because this has become quite a hot topic. You'll probably, if you read the news, you'll see a lot of companies like Combank and that force people to come in and, well, not force people, but, well, yeah, they have, haven't they? They were like 3-4 days a week, and then there was a big pushback and so on and so forth. Jacob started off by saying, like, look, you can be as flexible as you want. However, we're starting to lean a bit more on that flexibility goes both ways. It's not just about it's flexible, i.e. you can stay home and do what you want, but it's flexible as in sometimes you need to be here, sometimes you don't. So it's interesting to get a feel for where you think, like you're going to be graduates or interns in this company. So there's a big difference between sort of a senior engineer saying, well, look, I'm going to work at home 2 days a week because they don't need the support. And a graduate saying, I'm going to work at home 2 days a week. And then you're putting pressure on the senior in the office to provide you with work, to provide you with guidance. So it's interesting to see sort of like where people sit from a graduate perspective. In my view, you learn the most from sitting next to someone. It's as simple as that, right? Otherwise, you have to set up Teams conversations and discussions and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's interesting. So 3 days, like 3.3 days. Yeah.
So come in for 3 days and then go home at sort of morning tea.
Yeah. But it's interesting that the majority of people are saying around 3 based on that curve. Like you probably look, maybe there's a couple of people at 2, but dominantly 3. No one's saying 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Is that what that is? Oh yes, there's a few people are full time. I think it's an interesting one. It's one that's it's not just us, but I think it's gonna shape out over the next sort of couple of years in terms of how companies adapt and change and that sort of thing. We've been forced to adapt into sort of online in this sort of environment, and whether or not it actually works or not, whether or not we can keep efficiency up, whether or not we can appropriately train people as well. We can actually keep graduates, learning. Yeah. Anyway.
And it's actually quite challenging in terms of like full-time online working, because when I started my work, it was during COVID, so we work 5 days at home, and it's not very good for graduates to study. So I'm glad that now we can go to office to have that face-to-face interaction.
Yeah, no, a lot of benefits there, and I'm actually noticing it since being out on this project, this M7 M12 project. I'm in the design office all the time, 5 days a week, and they're definitely encouraged to come, but I think there's it's actually an expectation, I think would be a stronger word, that people are in, sort of 4 days a week. I think we see the benefits of that, in a fast-paced design environment like that. You really need to be interacting and able to pull people into conversations as needs be, not having to set up a Teams call. But I like the fact that now we've broken the back of hybrid working, and we can do something like this online at 5 o'clock, and everyone can still join in. Doesn't matter where we're sitting, where we are in the afternoon. We don't have to all be in the one room at the same time. So it's definitely efficient that way too.
Okay. Go on, David.
Oh well, we talked about it a bit, didn't we? Certainly the left side one, work-life balance, is definitely part of it. People thinking this, 1-2 days a week at home is helping with that. You don't have to commute. You can make appointments nearby if needs be, and you can still attend those during the day without breaking up your work too much. Purchase leave, to be honest, I'm not sure why that's on that slide, but hey, you can actually buy more leave than the standard 4 weeks per year at Jacobs as part of that policy, and pay for it sort of over a 12-month period, so you can enjoy that work-life balance even more.
Oh, Braden, this is you. Finally, this is your moment.
So as you know, we have a graduate intern program. Unfortunately, the intern program has just closed for this year. It closed, I think, last week on Sunday. So in Jacobs, the graduate program is 2 years, and usually you specialize in what you want to do, but there is opportunities. So if you were to say to your manager, "Oh, I want to work in, like, let's say the bridge team," then your manager could find you an opportunity if there's an opening, and you can go work there and learn a little bit. But mostly you're supposed to specialize in your area. Outside of work, there's many social and networking events. So I think in this year they've had board games. They've had like networking with seniors to kind of know the direction that your career is going to take, or where you want to take your career. They've also, on the right-hand side, they also went for coffee. So during office hours, if there's grads in, they'll go and do things together, and that's pretty good. Yeah.
Career progression. Yeah, over to you, Dave.
Oh, sorry. Right. Yes. I'm all over it. Career progression. Yes. Well, do you want to go to the next slide? People can start, answering the question. And so, this is it feels like a generational question, this idea of, would you actually stay at one company for a long time? Certainly that's the experience of our, the generation before us, that they would stay at one company for their whole career. It doesn't seem to be the thinking now. But, I wanted to talk about this because an idea that we have at Jacobs and we've seen play out, you know, even probably for people, you know, myself and Rob, that you can actually move around within the company and get like a career that doesn't just take one single line. It's not a straight line. There's because it's such a big company, there's so many different areas that you can be involved in. Reardon just mentioned it before about, you know, putting your hand up and saying, I'd like to learn about structures and be part of the structures team for a while, even if you've been brought on as a geotech engineer, for example. People within my team, the roads and highways team, also have asked about, you know, getting pavement design experience and drainage design experience, working out on site, like Rob was mentioning, that CPS, construction support, means you're actually on site and learn a lot in a very short space of time about how things are actually done on site, which improves your capabilities in design. But it's not just engineering. So there's, you know, we've got a whole project management group. There's the commercial side of things, commercial managers, all the financial management side of things, and you know, general management itself, operations management, and all that. Was a few examples there, I suppose, of the different areas and specialties that we're involved in. So yeah, we're part of this infrastructure piece, but that also relates directly to cities and places, because the infrastructure is in the cities. Energy, environment is powering all those things. You know, so there's lots of linkages there, and if you've got eyes to see it and develop a network, then there's these different work streams that you can actually tap into. Probably not all in the first 2 years, but you know, like as your career progresses and your interests actually change through time, you can stay within the one company and continue to build that network. So I guess I just wanted to put it out there and say that that's a great opportunity and a way of thinking things. That doesn't mean you have to bounce around from different companies and start again all the time. Benefits.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So what kind of system? If you type it in, it'll populate. Yeah, go on. So it's a word cloud. So what comes to mind when you think about employee benefits? What sort of employee benefits do you want? Money. I think that's just a standard.
That relates to the last slide too, about people would stay at the one company if the pay was right. That's good. I'm down for that.
Retail discounts. Okay.
Yeah.
Keep going. Less of the money. Paid leave. Paid leave standard is. I mean, I think the only time you'd ever not have that is if you were a contractor, like some people go independent, but you'd struggle as a graduate to do that. A travel allowance. If it's a company trip, then it will be paid for. It should be paid for in its entirety, I suppose, unless it's Yes. Okay, so what we got here? Flight discounts. I think we do have flight discounts actually through Qantas. It's the companies. So we make a choice with certain things. Qantas is our travel partner for flights, and then Hertz for rental vehicles. And through those, as a result of those, we get discounts on there. I'm not too sure how much it is, but we do. Well, it's flying around all over the place now. What else we get? Medical insurance.
Money's still front and center, guys.
Yeah, money's still right up there. Well, theoretically, the benefits that we do have, at least things like Qantas, Hertz, we get a discounted Bupa. It'll mean you've got more money in your pocket rather than spending on those things. But I don't know what overseas worm is. The overseas worm.
Maybe?
Work, I guess. Yeah. I like the worm. Overseas work. Yeah, that could be part of Jacob's goal. And different projects you're on, you may end up getting an opportunity to work abroad and stuff. Sick pay, yeah, that's all standard. Annual holiday, yeah, that all comes with it. Flexible working, we've got all that. That means more than one person's typed in overseas worm, doesn't it?
It's become the most popular.
Gym memberships. I don't think we have any particular gym membership. I remember there was an offer or something that went round for what's it, the Thai place, the Thai boxing place up the road that does it's like women only. I'm sure there was a sponsorship for that. So I think that every so often that we do get sort of businesses and that'll sort of advertise through us, or like, you know, try and get people involved through us. But I don't think there's anything formal regarding gym memberships.
But we do have some like events, like fitness events, like yoga and boxing.
Yeah.
And some like, for example, City to Serve sponsorship.
Yeah, we've always got that's true actually. We've always got sponsorship for that sort of stuff. The City for Surfing, the gong. There's always Jacob's sponsorship or a Jacob's team involved in a lot of those things. But
Yes.
that's just being a big company. There's always someone who's involved in some sport, and regardless of how popular or sort of bespoke it is, there's always someone somewhere who's involved in stuff.
Yeah. So Jacob's quite encourage employees to be physically fit.
Yeah. All right. Oh, you've got something open written, that's why. I'll send her a message. If you want to quickly talk about employee benefits, I'll sort out this little work matter that you've created.
I'll let Dave talk about the employee benefits. It's been here longer than me.
Thanks, mate. Look, I think Rob's actually probably mentioned most of them as we went through and looking at your different responses there. But that second one there, salary continuance insurance, it sounds so boring, right? But if you're someone who has a car accident or some sort of medical situation that means you can't actually work, then Jacobs have an insurance policy which will pay you 75% of your salary until you're 65.
It's a genuinely good one as well. Like, so it goes on to 65. Most companies only go to 5 years. To buy that yourself will be incredibly expensive. And yeah, like if you're unfortunate enough to use that, it can be quite, well, yeah, it can be a lifesaver basically. Especially if you've got kids and that, you know, a mortgage, that sort of thing. It's not something you want to think about, but it's certainly, it's that backup and it's that safety net that's there.
Exactly. Like I honestly wouldn't have thought about it too much, except a guy on my team last year who's only in his 30s had a stroke and has had to, you know, I guess benefit from that insurance. It's like Rob said, unfortunate, but so that's cool. That's there. Public holiday swap, that's fun. You know, if you're particularly, I suppose, thinking back to that the diversity and inclusion thing. Like if you're not a Christian and you don't want to celebrate Easter, for example, then you can work on Good Friday and take your public holiday the week after, or you know, at a time nearby that suits you. And so, you know, there's lots of benefits and reasons for doing that. Someone mentioned about flights and cars and all that sort of thing. Bupa, they're probably the main things.
In terms of money, the HSBC one, like I got my mortgage through HSBC, and my rate is way better than any of my friends' rates. It's ridiculous. I mean, like in terms of, you know, people are talking about money. If you want to save some money at the moment, yeah, like stuff like that, like partnerships like that are like really beneficial. You just don't realize it until like I didn't really care. I joined Jacobs, I didn't care about that. But then, you know, a few years happen and that, and you settle down and that, naturally it becomes a really important aspect of your life. Yeah. Cool. Was that it? Oh, 34. Yeah. Not too bad timing, really. Well done. Okay.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Yeah, you really sought us there with the employee benefits. Definitely go looking to Jacobs now. Especially the house loan, that will be very helpful in this economy. Yeah, so we'll move on to Q&A. We have a few questions on Slido. So I'll get started with the first one. Is there any internship opportunity of Jacobs as an international student without citizenship or PR?
We'll have to. I don't know if you know. Yeah, definitely. Reardon already knows about this. So
Let
yes,
me quickly search for that.
But as long as you've got I assume as long as you've got you're legally allowed to work here, with you know, as part of either the end of your education visa or you've got an actual work visa, then there shouldn't be a problem, really.
I'll just jump in quickly. Yeah, it's Donna, by the way. Yeah, so we actually did have a few people who joined who did not actually have permanent residency, and that just really depends on what skills you bring to the table. And even if potentially you might want to go to another country, but it's like within Jacobs, then that's also taken into consideration too when you apply. So honestly, it's encouraged that you just apply, and then we'll just look at a case-by-case basis.
Lovely. Yeah, is there anything else we would like to add to that question, or good? All right. Second question. What do you look for in graduates that isn't particularly taught at university?
I think I could answer to that one. To be honest, a lot of the things that I'm looking for are not taught at university. It's more about your attitude and the way that you think about things. Often things like outside of work that you've done show a certain level of how proactive you are, how interested you are in things outside of work as well. They're the sort of things that can be a differentiator, because most people who apply are going to have really good marks, because that's what you need to be successful at university. But yeah, it's those other sort of intangible things that come through in an interview in particular, which are often quite difficult to pick up on a CV, but they're the things that really matter, I suppose, at work.
I think there are generally three aspects we'll look at. The first one is your academic performance, and the second is your extracurricular activities, and the third one is your work experience. So if you, for example, do very well in one aspect, I think even you don't have one of the other, that would be fine. So it needs to, we will look at like as a whole and assess case by case.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for those answers. Just having a look at our Slido. Yeah, just to tie into that question, actually, if our marks are in the 60 to 70 range, does that mean our chances of getting an internship are pretty low?
I don't think so. It's more, yeah. There's more to it than. Don't get me wrong. Like, obviously, if you're absolutely killing it at university and that, then it puts you in incredibly good stead. And I think if you're lagging a little bit, I suppose you need to sort of check yourself and be like, look, do I need to put in more effort here? Am I sort of flagging in certain areas, or am I excelling in certain areas? And maybe that pushes you down a certain career path. There's no point in kind of like trying to enter a career where you got the worst marks and you did, whereas in another part of the course that you did very well and you've just ignored that. But I don't think so. Apply. As David said, there's a lot more. There's a lot more that we look at than just sort of tick, 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 tick. You learn so much more. Like when people join, like it's not like a graduate joins and you just give them work and they just work with it. The assumption is that graduate has a basic level of engineering understanding, and with support, they're able to perform at that task. So university is only part of it, really. When you get it, there's a lot more to it than that. We're also looking for people that fit with the team as well. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, we might not hang out with each other all the time, but it is somewhat of a work family. So you are looking for people to sort of fit in that mix. So it's not all about grades. But certainly, if you are concerned about grades, then I think you need to look at yourself a little bit and sort of where your weaknesses are, where your strengths are, and potentially tailor your career choices based on that for sure. But
yeah, so nothing to lose, just apply.
What's the worst that's gonna happen?
Absolutely. Yeah, what's the worst that could happen? Let's go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, just to add on to that question as well, I think it was mentioned earlier that this year's internship program has closed. So when will the next round of internships open for Jacobs?
Do you know when that is?
It should be next year around July. So you got to wait a whole year.
Yeah, keep it in your diaries, everyone. July 2024. Yeah. We have one question on the Zoom Q&A. It says, hello, thank you very much for today's session. It seems that apart from the new airport, there are fewer projects to do with buildings, such as government buildings, education spaces, etc., that Jacob is currently part of in Sydney. Would you say that Jacobs works less with such structures?
I wouldn't say so. I think what you're seeing here is the bias from the team you've got in front of you. You know, we think about the transport projects most of the time, but like as I said, you know, when I was talking about that whole career progression thing, there's definitely there's a whole team called Cities and Places, and that's where the buildings structural engineers are, the architects, all the services engineers for building projects and all that sort of thing. And our sort of visibility of that is reasonably limited. I could give you an example of a hospital that we're designing the car park and the drainage for, you know, like that's kind of our connection with that team. We don't often overlap, but so unfortunately I can't talk to, maybe some of these guys can't talk to directly the scale of the projects that we do in those other in buildings and things, but there's an overlap even with Metro, you know, in the station buildings and fit outs and all that sort of thing that team's involved in the transport projects. So yeah, I don't know if you other guys have got...
Good. Technically, because we don't really get involved much in them, it's just simply because those guys don't get us involved in it. So yeah. We're certainly doing stuff, but generally what you find is with a building, I guess they'll have the budget, you know, to get Jacobs involved for, you know, the majority of the structural engineering and that, but then you'll tend to find there'll be a smaller contractor who's dealing with the foundations and that, which is where geotechnically we'd come in. So that's why we probably don't really have much in that way to do with it, or at least with our knowledge of what we're exposed to. But certainly there's stuff like that going on in the company. Yeah.
So in terms of a building, I know we have a few aspects of building in Jacobs. So I have like a health building, like we will build a hospital. So that's a special team. And then we also have building for, like, for example, to design signal structure and like a bridge building, and also like a structure, like just normal building. So have different areas. And project also vary based on these areas.
Yeah, so lots of departments and sectors. Yeah. So I'm just getting bombarded with questions at the moment. I'm trying to pick and choose or to apply. Do you hire engineers from other fields, such as mechanical?
Yeah. Yep. Mechanical engineers are part of that building services team, you know, with air conditioning and the tunnel fit outs and all that sort of thing for the ventilation and things. So yeah.
Yep. Lovely. And this one's an interesting one. How is the concept of sustainability applied in the development of a project, or how have you seen it applied in the projects you have been involved in?
So at Jacobs, we're actually very big on sustainability. And for each graduates, we are requested to learn sustainability concept. And in Jacobs, we have a special tool. I think it's called like Value Plus. So that tool, you can use it to calculate, for example, carbon dioxide in your project. So you use that tool to try to minimize the your carbon footprint. And we also have like I think called SDG. Like we consider like government, consider people, consider climate, these kind of things in projects. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of sustainability, I guess, is done at the planning stage as well. So it's through the government and such like that. So it needs, well, it doesn't need to be, but it dominantly, it benefits when it's brought in at that sort of stage. And Jacobs gets involved with that, right? Like, so the government, I don't know, Transport for New South Wales, it'll commission Jacobs to do, you know, like to put together a report, a preliminary assessment of, I don't know, a route corridor or something like that. And as part of that, you know, you'll assess like ecological impacts, environmental impacts, and so on and so forth. And then some of those may be contractually written so that the contractor picks up on it. On recent jobs, we found that actually the contractor themselves have a lot of environmental and sustainable sort of criteria that they need to hit on certain jobs, especially government jobs. And then also you've got them, they just want to cut costs as well. So that means that reduced materials and that, which is ultimately sustainable. So certainly we're involved with it. And we don't really work in an environment, like in an industry that you could call yourself truly sustainable, because the most sustainable thing would be not to build it to begin with. So there is an element of impact, and it's more a case of managing that impact as appropriately as possible and reducing impacts overall. one of the projects we're dealing on at the moment, the M1 up near, if anyone's aware, near Newcastle, there's a dog leg in the M1 motorway where you have to stop at traffic lights and turn and then go over the old Hunter River Bridge. They're going to build a new viaduct over there, and that's something we're looking at the moment. There's a lot of things related to wildlife that we have to comply with. So we have all these little corridors for wildlife to cross the motorway. And there's like little there's these like wires and that will be put across the motorway to allow for gliders to cross. And there's also under bridge corridors and that for like wombats and all the rest of it. So certainly wildlife protection in relation to still allowing us to build what we need to build. Yeah, it's just part of Jacobs and part of the wider sort of civil engineering industry now. So yeah.
Yeah, so in transport, so in our rail team, we also look at different like sustainable solutions. For example, use like clean energy for like to power train instead of using the traditional ways of electricity. And also we will look at how to automate things to make it more efficiently. Like for example, use some AI to like to plan the train time better. So these are all areas we are looking at and focus on.
Wonder if it's worth mentioning about climate change adaptation as well. I guess sort of mentioned there in passing, but yeah, no, like there's impacts to do with climate on the like rainfall intensity, for example. And so, you know, we have a team that looks at design criteria that we could apply to projects so that appropriate, say, upsizing of drainage infrastructure is implemented so that increased rainfall is actually still dealt with appropriately on the infrastructure and there's no damage and rework associated with that in 15 or 20 or 50 years time. So yeah, we have a sustainability team that, like Alyssa mentioned, it does those tools that we can use to assess carbon impacts, but also, yeah, these design criteria that we can apply to the general project.
Yeah, I feel like that aspect's been neglected for a very long time, but now it's quite common to consider it everywhere.
I wish we talked about it 20 years ago, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Just mindful of time. This one's an interesting one for all the reps today. Just lost it. There we go. Here it is. What do you personally think makes JCAD different from other civil engineering companies, and or why did you personally decide to work there?
Yeah, well, I'd be happy to take that to start with. Like I said, I was working for a construction company and then started working for SKM, which was then bought by Jacobs, but you know, it's part of the same historical company. And the reason I actually made that switch was because I was working on an alliance project where we were like embedded together in the team. I was in the construction team and the designers were in the team, and we were working quite closely together. And I thought, hey, you know what? These guys are actually like all right, and just and also the way that the company operated, I thought, I could just see a career path that attracted me in a different way to the construction industry, and so yeah, I mean that was my first foray, and then like I said, I went overseas and worked, but then when I came back to Sydney, I thought, well, I have a really strong network and I know some really good people at Jacobs. I'm just going to ring up my old boss and see what he can do for me. And came back in and it was like I'd never left in some ways, can just slide straight back in. So, I mean, for me anyway, the culture really resonated. The things that are important to Jacobs were also aligned with the things that were important to me. And like we've already talked about, the number of diversity of projects and the biggest things in town that you can get involved in is something that really attracts me as well. So I wouldn't necessarily say that last one sets us apart from other firms, because there's other firms that do this, but the people piece is probably where it's at for me. Any thoughts, Rob, Alyssa?
Yeah, probably just people, the team. When I initially came to the company, we had projects that I wanted to work on, which is that's just the way it is, isn't it? It could have been another corporation, but certainly we had the projects, but it was more the people, the team. Like you could work in you could work in like what's considered to be the best company, absolutely excellent. But if the team isn't good, and you're going to have a terrible time, you're not going to learn a lot. Just generally, you're just not going to develop. You're not going to enjoy yourself. The team is absolutely crucial, I think, and that's something that, from a geotechnical perspective, having worked in different teams, this team's really good. And as a result, I've really enjoyed working in Jacobs to this point.
Yeah, for me, it's similar. Like I feel Jacobs have this very big on diversity and inclusion, and this is very important to me. And also, like Jacobs is also doing great job in terms of pushing sustainability, and it resonates my value as well. And the third part is people, because not only we have many good engineers here, but also they are willing to guide young engineers, and they are very friendly and helpful and very committed in training graduates. So that's very important for me as well.
Yeah,
cool.
It's great to hear. And we probably have time for maybe one more question. How did Jacob win the airport project?
I'd love to know myself.
Anyone on the panel?
There's so many parts of that project.
We don't know what we're actually truly involved with, but it's like it could be anything. Like, so with a lot of these jobs, like so there's jobs that we weren't actually involved with in the detailed design, but will be an independent certifier on. Or you may have an involvement as a very small part of as a proofing engineer, and you might get, like, you never hear about those sort of projects really. M6, we're a proofing engineer on that, so we'll probably advertise that. But if you look on paper, you'll be like, well, hang on, Arcadis are doing the design. But there's kind of like, there's a lot of sideline stuff as well. And as a result, companies like Jacobs are involved in everything. We've got to figure out a lot of projects basically. So
lots of lawyers probably.
There's a few.
Yeah.
That's another career path.
Just looking at our questions now. Yeah, I think we've pretty much covered majority of the topics. Any last questions? Final call. Last 10 seconds.
Oh, yes. Just to ask you something like this. Normally for the grad program, it is very could be very competitive, like thousands application. How to be successful within these thousands application? Any suggestions?
Yeah, well, I think that we sort of touched on it before, but some of the things that set you apart are things that demonstrate like your character and your personality and your ability to be proactive. So, part-time jobs or full-time jobs or early career jobs, anything that you're trying to do to sort of push ahead like that, extracurricular stuff like Alyssa mentioned. A lot of people are going to have good marks. Like everyone's focused on the marks while you're at uni, that's great. But don't neglect those other things, because that can be the differentiators really. I think.
And also like
sorry.
Rob, you go first.
Well, make sure your application doesn't look like everyone else's, I suppose. Like if people are sort of passing around a CV and that, and you're like, oh yeah, that's good, yeah. You just change the name at the top. You know what I mean? Like it's very obvious from our side of it. You know what I mean? Like just make sure that when you write it, it's like an honest sort of appraisal of you as a person, as a human. And think about it. We're reading that, and we want, we don't just want a graduate. We want a mate sitting next to us, and I know we can lean on and be like, hey, look, can you help us out with this? Can you do this? Just think about that when you're putting it together. And certainly if a friend shows you theirs, then yours should look different to that. You know what I mean? Don't lean on it. Oh, look, you set it out. Oh, this looks nice. Now, can you send me that template? And suddenly yours looks exactly the same as theirs. Because we don't want that, everyone's individual. Diversity of applications. So yeah, just make sure you sort of put emphasis on what, as Dave's saying, like the stuff outside of work, outside of uni rather. It's not all about uni. Certainly that's part of it. We need a graduate who's actually graduated uni. But, like if you're involved in sports and hobbies and all that sort of stuff, throw that in there. Show us who you are outside of just, outside of your degree, basically.
And I would say that you need to show your research. You really need to take quite a lot of time to research this company, to show your understanding of the business in your application. And your application for each company should be tailored. And for each role should be different. Every resume, every cover letter, they should be different. And you need to carefully check they don't have any grammar, spelling mistakes, because this will be easily picked up.
Yeah, that's true. I can tell you one reason why we may not progress an application is if we get it and it's come to geotech, someone's going, I want to work in geotech, but the cover letter is basically written for rail or something like that. And it's like, well, you don't want to work in geotech. You know, there's no, it's a very simple thing to change, but you haven't bothered to do it. So that shows that you know what I mean? Like you just don't care enough, basically. And so little things like that, man, just make sure that, you know, you're applying for roles that you want to apply for and that, you know, yeah, you've done your research and so on.
Yeah. Lovely. Well, thank you so much for your time, Rob, David, and Alyssa. You definitely gave us a very, very good overview of what Jacob is and what you guys stand for in the projects that you're involved in. I really think that part of the Jacob's charm is that it's just so diverse and, you know, so many different departments and things you can be involved in. So I'm sure there's lots of opportunities for our students with the internships coming out next year. So yeah.
Maybe graduate program.
Sorry?
You can also like look at our graduate program.
Oh yeah, graduate program. Would you like to expand on that a bit more, Alyssa?
Yeah. I think we have like each year we have graduate program. Do anyone of us know when it opens?
Yeah, that opens next year, but like March. So open next year. Sit tight till next year, I guess.
Yeah. The graduate program is usually for people who is in the final year or have graduated. And JCAS offer like 2-year graduate program, and we have like very, very good and clear structure to train graduates. So throughout this program, you get like trainings and you meet with other like leaders and graduates, and you need to learn different skills such as business understanding of business and to improve certain competencies. So I would definitely encourage everyone to look at graduate program as well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely something to keep an eye out. Yeah. Well, I think that concludes our industry talk for tonight. Thank you again to our Jacobs reps for their time, especially on a Monday after Monday evening. Yeah, and just before everyone leaves the Zoom, just a few SUS updates. So next week, oh, the lights turned off. Right, you can still hear my voice.
Light that candle. Yep.
Yeah. So my office floors just turn off the lights. Oh well, you can still see me. Yeah, so SUS updates. So next week we'll have our second industry talk with Ward. This one will be only in person, so there's no online option. We have a really high caliber panelists coming in just like today. So we have directors from Ward, Traffic for New South Wales, Gamuda and ACOM, I believe, Anju. Let me know if I missed any. And it will be only in person in PNR Lecture 1. And I believe there would be more PEP hours for grabs on that. But keep an eye out on our Facebook page. And also on the 23rd of August, we'll have our industry night. So if you haven't bought your tickets, definitely go to our Facebook page for that. Just got a question. The ward is AS2, right? So the ward interviews next week would be separate from our PEP package. You can still get your PEP hours within the PEP package. The ward interview will be a separate one with extra PEP hours, but you'll only be in person 5:30 Monday, PNR Lecture 1. Yeah, and right on the dot, 6 o'clock. Yes. All right. Thank you everyone for your time, especially the Jacobs reps. And
worries.
have a good
Thanks for
evening.
the opportunity. Yeah, you too.
And I'll
Take
go
care.
turn my lights on.
Thank you for organizing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks
everyone.
everyone.
See ya.
Bye.